Welcome to Silver Linings Talk Show. This is our July episode, and we are so excited to bring you an amazing show today with some wonderful, amazing guests, trailblazing guests. So today we are talking about women who are working and shifting energy in male-dominated careers. And we're so excited to be joined by Michelle Lemoi, who is the owner and creator of Elevate Women in Construction and a new author of her book, Born to Rise, and Julie Gillespie, who is a CPA and also a published author with her book, The Well Flow Code. And we'll talk a little bit more about their books, and we have so much to learn from them today, so we are so excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, so there's so much to cover here, and I want to pivot off of what Dina said about male energy.
Yes.
So what do we see in male versus female energies? Like, what are we talking about? You want to take this question first, and then we'll take Michelle. I know you guys have met recently, and I think you really had some great energy together, so I want to hear what you both have to offer when it comes to this.
Yeah.
Julie, what do you have to say?
So we each have both energies. Every person does. The male energy is the yang, and it's the doing, and the female energy is the yin, and it's the being. And the yang, the doing, the structure, the logic, you know, and the feminine is more of the being and receiving. So you really need both, and when you can find a balance of both, you can get more done with less effort.
And anything to add? Male, female energy.
Yeah, I tell people it's, and we touched upon it, it's this doing, pushing, striving. And when we stay in that doing, pushing, striving, because that's what's awarded in our male-dominated industries and in our culture, it can lead to burnout and feeling depleted. And so we have to balance that with sort of this resting and being still and being in nature, because that gets us out of that, because too much of that male masculine energy is just not necessarily good for us, but we need it because otherwise we would just be lying around and doing nothing all of the time, and that doesn't work either. So she's correct, we need to have a healthy balance.
Yes.
Yeah, and that yin and yang is like that perfect example of it, is that we do need both of them. And thank you for both of you for kind of explaining a little bit about male and female energy. And I would love to know how each of you were pulled to your career paths and to your industries. So whoever wants to take it first.
I will, if you'd like.
Sure.
So I took a bookkeeping class in high school, and I loved it. So I decided, I knew I wanted to go into business, so I just decided to go into accounting and major in accounting in college, and then I became a CPA. I just didn't realize of the demands of tax season until later, that there's like very little feminine energy in, you know, those deadlines and pushing and forcing and trying to get everything done. So that's why I have to incorporate the feminine energy and do the resting and, you know, walking in nature and all the different tools in my book.
Great. And how about you? What pulled you towards the industry of construction?
So I actually fell into construction. I was working as an administrative assistant for a local furniture company in Rhode Island, and they decided they were going to act as their own GC to build their own buildings. And so I sort of ended up as a right-hand person, just falling into it. But I really loved it. And after a couple of years, when they said, you know, we're not going to be building any more buildings, you're going to go back to being your, you know, executive assistant duties, I was like, I think it's time to move on. I kind of like this, and I think I want to pursue a career in it. And so it kind of launched from there, and my concentration ended up being in the steel industry, mostly miscellaneous metals, which is your stairs, hand railings, ladders. And I really didn't think anything about it because I just wanted to be accepted, and so being in those masculine energies sort of became just routine because
Right.
I had to survive and I had to keep going but I was able to bring in those feminine energies, sort of a femininity of who I was, which was bringing humor into situations and being more team collaborative and wanting to have everyone be excited about the project we were doing, because the doing, pushing, striving is just every day. It's every minute. You're firefighting. You're always in it, and there's no break. Yeah. And so how do we? And as I've gotten older, through my career of almost 30 years now in the industry, it's my body at this age is really forcing me to stop. And give me symptoms, physical symptoms of I'm overdoing it. You're out of alignment, and you need to get back into alignment.
Wow, you just hit on a huge point right
Absolutely.
there, because both of you have just hinted at, okay, there's, in pain and discomfort, we find our power and our purpose, right? So you just started going where I wanted you to go. You're so magical. What have been some of your experiences that have brought you into your power and purpose within your industries and the struggles that you've had? Like you just said, right now, you're finding that there's a little bit of a struggle. So how are you getting out of that? What is your power and purpose now because of the struggles that you have had?
Yeah, so I had a turning point a couple years ago. I was in sort of in this very high pressure and sort of toxic masculine energy situation, and really was thinking, is there anything more to life? And as I was facing potentially being let go because of downsizing and post-COVID and things like that, I realized that I had devoted my entire life to this working. And I really was like, what am I gonna do next? I don't have a network. I don't have people that I can lean on. I don't know where I'm gonna go for a new job. This was sort of the career I was gonna have while my son was going through college. And now all of a sudden, I'm faced with a new decision, and I'm burnt out, sick as a dog for 16 weeks. All of these things that were just signs that things weren't right. And so I had to make some drastic changes, and one of those changes was actually creating Elevate Women in Construction as a way for women to find community and support in getting out of that survival mode and getting into thriving. And now that became, I need to walk the walk and I need to talk the talk, and so where do I need to make changes? And that's been an evolution over the last couple of years.
Can you just talk maybe a little bit more about certainly what you created for your business, Elevate?
Yeah, so it started off as a membership for women to come in and receive personal and professional development. And I had 5 beautiful souls step into that container for about 9 months. And it was great. We had a guest speaker every month, sort of had a women's circle night where we could come and talk about the things that affect us. And it was lovely. And at the end of that, when I ended that, I thought, gosh, now what am I supposed to be doing? Because this doesn't seem to be taking off. And so I had to pivot again. And what came out of that was actually going into organizations like I am in a couple weeks, where they've invited me to come in and speak to their women in their organization and talk about, stop doing this pushing, doing, striving, and let's stand in our inner power. And what does that look like? And a lot of that is what I teach is knowing who you are. Who am I? Outside of my role of being in this company, outside of this role of being in my family, but who am I personally? And understanding my environment and what isn't working and what is working. And then, sort of self-care practices, which I'm going to defer to Julianne because she has amazing ideas in her book. So
Thank you.
And as you're speaking, I just feel like so much is relevant for both men and women. And we'll talk about some of your experiences coming up, in our conversation about the impact on men that you have been working with and such, about shifting that energy. And then you talked about burnout. And Julie, you had certainly a story about burnout. So definitely looking at how that male-dominated energy, as you talked about, it can get you sick. It can cause, physical illness. It can make someone so stressed out. It can make someone at that point feel like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Tell us about your experience with burnout. And did you leave your career or did you have to shift?
Right, so quite a few years ago, I experienced that burnout. As Michelle mentioned, as getting older, and my body just, it's 35 years of doing this, tax season, deadlines and the pressure and the stress. So it's a lot of male energy, and I wasn't doing the self-care. So I realized, it led me on a journey to realize that I had to learn about self-care, start practicing it, and schedule it on my calendar. It's non-negotiable. It gets scheduled ahead of time. I have everything scheduled for tax season so that I can really take care of myself.
I like the story that you told us about the example that you set in your office, in a way, because it is a male-dominated industry, and don't you, even during tax season when it all is kind of going crazy, go ahead and take your walks and take your time?
Yes, yeah, because I work such a long, day from, I don't know, maybe 9 to 9. Around 3 o'clock, I have like a little lull. And so I said, this is a perfect time to go for a walk. I just go for my walk. Everybody's looking at me because I'm going out for a walk. It's, it might be even winter time, but I'm going. And when I come back to my desk, I feel so good.
And have you influenced anyone else to decide to take a break, do something for themselves, or do you feel they're still stuck?
I think that indirectly we influence people. It's kind of like I'm taking care of myself, so I'm kind of a role model, and I am a better leader because I'm empowering myself, and then I'm able to empower others.
Yes.
And I like to use humor, like
Also.
Michelle said.
Yes. Has anyone else joined you on a walk?
Not yet.
Ah,
That's okay. Maybe that's your time.
yeah.
I was going to say that I really do enjoy the time to kind of decompress, so
Yes.
it's very gratifying.
Yes. One thing in our conversation that we talked about too, and this kind of goes along with it, is you set boundaries.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk about boundaries with the both of you. And one of that boundaries you set was, I set self-care in my schedule, non-negotiable. Any other boundaries that you set in your work to really help you through your day?
Well, it's really taking control of my calendar, right? And so, if I have to meet 5 clients, is it better for me to meet them all on the same day, one after another, so I can be in that flow of just interviewing clients? Or do I want them scattered all over the place? So it's just really about, that's one boundary, is controlling your calendar, what you want to happen.
Yeah.
It makes you feel more empowered.
Yes.
And some other boundaries might be, saying no if I don't want to go to an event. I have a tendency to be a people pleaser, so I would always say yes in the past, and now I'm like, that doesn't make me feel good, so I'm going to say no, and you don't even have to say why, you just no.
And I think that feminine energy is that more people-pleasing energy.
Yes.
And then, like you said, that other component of bringing in some of that male energy of saying no, that this doesn't make me feel good, and I can say no, and that is okay.
Yes, and I want to add one more thing about boundaries. Is
Yes.
I've learned that when we set boundaries for ourselves, we're actually teaching other people how we want to be treated. And I think that's key.
And how about boundaries for you?
Yeah, I can totally relate. I tend to be a people pleaser. It's because of the way I was brought up. And I think that for me recently, it's really about delegating and holding people responsible. I work with a team of about 10 people right now, and I have to say very kindly, no, I'm sorry, I can't put that on my plate right now. you know what, I'm going to need you to call. Would you mind calling for me, please? And it's just being very, like, I can feel that empowerment and that standing in my power when I say that. And it makes me feel good for me, but it makes them feel good because they're helping, contributing, instead of ending up becoming the person that everybody comes to and sort of dumps on because, well, Michelle will take care of it. Michelle will fix it. So that's hard. That was hard for me. The first couple times I said it, I was just sort of waiting for, like, okay, is this going to go over well or not? And so I had to stop thinking about what their reaction was going to be and just deal with it. Like, put it out there and then wait and see.
That's actually, you just brought up a good point. Their reaction, emotional responses. Emotional responses in the workplace. That, I mean, it can vary, but there seems to be one that is acceptable in the male dominant, and then some that just are not so much. And anger seems to be socially acceptable, correct?
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain what your feeling is? Is it changing? Are we bringing more feminine energy? I mean, crying doesn't seem to be acceptable in the workplace.
Right. So
right?
there's that piece where that is not working either.
Right. So I think you told us a story about a contract.
Yeah.
And how it's okay to get angry that it hadn't been accepted, but so that there seems to be a shift. You talked about humor. Can you share with us how that maybe is shifting or trying to take away the anger on that?
Yeah, I think, when I started in this business years ago, people yelling and being physical was a very regular situation. I think now it's definitely not tolerated as much. I think the thing is, you can be angry and be respectful about it and not disrespectful. I think that people are trying to figure out how to deal with their emotions and they don't necessarily know how to. So I typically, like, if I've got somebody yelling at me, I may say, you know what, your tone, your language is getting to be unproductive. This conversation is becoming unproductive. We're going to table it right now, and we're going to come back to it. And I'm going to be available to take that call or to be back here in person or whatever the case may be. So I think that it's, again, the sort of teaching people how we want to be treated, and then just holding firm in that.
I love a story that you said where you went in, and I don't know if you were talking to a group and someone goes, oh, we're going to talk about emotions.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So
Such a good one.
Thank you. I taught a class in December for a contractor, and it was a mix of men and women. And we were talking about negotiations. And I asked the class ahead of time in a survey, I said, how many of you negotiate from the point of just logic? And 99% of them, were like, yeah, that's me. And I said, how many of you bring in emotion and relational, tactics? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I said, well, haven't you ever done a negotiation and you've gotten, like, angry that it didn't go well or they wouldn't budge on their price? And everybody's like, oh, well, yeah, all the time. And it's like, okay, well, then that's an emotional response. And, relational is you're going to get that much further if you're bringing in empathy, compassion, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Why does the subcontractor need the work? Why do they want the work from you? And you have to ask all those questions. And so at the end of the feedback that I got from the end of the class was, one of the young men said, you bring kindness into construction and it's what we need. I'm going to continue to try to mirror that and be more kind in my negotiations. It's like, yeah, you've got to look at these things. You can't just barge, push, set these strong limits. There's got to be some flexibility. And so I think without them knowing that it's bringing in feminine energy, because I didn't really use that terminology, it's getting it out there.
It may have been a little bit too much for people to hear that.
Yes.
No,
Exactly.
but they needed to hear it.
But they need to hear it in a different way that they could take it
Right.
in.
That's right.
Right.
That's the
And that
piece.
was a great way to bring it in. What about you, Julie, when it comes to that type of energy shift, what Michelle said? I mean, because same thing in accounting, I'm sure the responses are very similar.
Yeah, I think, going back to my previous comment about when we do our inner work on ourselves, we can be better, more empowered leaders, and that's a key because then it affects everybody around you.
Can you just show your book and just talk a little bit quickly about your book? Because this came out of being in a more male-dominated career field.
Yeah, so it's called The Wealth Flow Code, Finding Focus, Freedom, and Balance in a High-Stress Career. And it's got tools in every chapter. It's a 7-step system that I developed to find more balance in your life and incorporate both, of the energies with structure as well as the, resting.
Yeah. And the thing is that you walk the walk and you talk the talk.
I've been practicing it now for 3 years, and prior to that when I was learning, so.
And Michelle, you also have a book. Can you just share quickly and talk about your book?
Sure. So I'm one of 21 authors of this anthology book called Born to Rise: How 22 Extraordinary Women Rewrote Their Stories, Claimed Their Power, and Followed Their Dreams. Mine is about sort of building a foundation for us to be able to navigate through, right? Through life's storms. And I have a storm, so I encourage folks to go out and purchase the book because I think these stories will resonate with someone.
Yes. And how do you women just see these shifts just impacting your lives? And like you said, we inherently, that energy goes out to others around us. What have you seen? What have you experienced for yourself and with others?
Well, for me, I feel like I attract back to me how I feel. So I try to feel good all the time. Doing fun things, we talked about dancing and, I do a lot of meditating and yoga and mind-body connection, that kind of thing. So it's all good.
And that kind of helps you with the stress of the job.
That's right.
And the demands about yourself.
Yeah, I would mirror that. I would say, taking care of myself, connecting to like-minded women that can support, I can feel supported and support them, I think is super important. And just finding the humor, sometimes, tomorrow's another day and we can reset and we can try again. And I think there's hope in that.
Yes. And just wondering if there's any last tool, thought for our audience and our viewers that you think really helps to shift that energy.
I would say simplicity. If you can add simplicity to your life, just break down, like that's what I do during tax season. I just notify my network, I'm going to be busy, and I break things down, I schedule everything on my calendar, just make eating, everything as simple as possible, because then it's less stress during a stressful time.
Nice. Simplicity.
I would say breathing and getting out in nature. I think those are two very grounding techniques that really help us find the joy.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
We actually have a little video that our third co-host is going to join us on video and share with us some fashion.
Yes.
Fashions in maybe a male-dominated industry to make you feel more comfortable and powerful and at ease, because sometimes what you wear can really elevate your mood.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Hi, y'all. This is Diane Trone, correspondent for Silver Linings, coming to you from the Nordstrom store dressing room here in South Park Mall, Charlotte, North Carolina. And I wanted to give you some fashion tips on what's trending these days for women, especially women in a man's career field. So back in the early 2000s, the thing that everybody was wearing was the mix and match suits. So they were very suity, pinstripes, you know, the matching jackets with the matching skirts, matching pants. And that's kind of, you know, gone away because it's not so much that you want to look like a man anymore. It's more that we want to be comfortable, and let's own our femininity. Let's like add a little bit to it so that we can add our feminine touch, so we're not dressing just like a man. So I brought to you some ideas today. So first of all, you can probably tell, let's see if I can get the camera out here far enough, that, oh, and I can go here to the mirror and show you that I have on, let's see, I'm gonna spin around here and show you that I have on a black, it's a sheath dress with a cowl neck. I've added a little bit of a nice, beautiful feminine necklace to it. I have a little sweater over it. It's a little 3/4 sweater. So you don't have to have a jacket on anymore at the workplace. It's fun to add a really cool little sweater with it. It could even be a pop of color sweater. So if I had a pink sweater, behind me, what you'll see is a black sheath dress and a pink jacket. This is a really feminine, comfortable way to dress in a man's world. Add that pop of color, and out the door you go. And it's a sheath dress, it's comfortable, it's lovely, it's feminine, and it's sexy, but not in a direct sexy way. It just shows femininity. And I just wanted to come to you and just tell you a little bit about dressing for the world these days, because we've been through the pandemic. People got very casual during the pandemic. Now we're sprucing it up again, and we're doing more fun, more colorful things. And I hope you have a fashionable, lovely day. Have fun with it.